Hi, welcome to another episode of ColdFusion, where I cover anything in science, technology, business or history. Elizabeth Holmes was the darling of Silicon Valley, a brilliant thinker, a fearless empowerment icon. She envisioned a revolutionary product called the Edison that could fit on a desk and yet perform over 1,000 medical tests and diagnoses with a single drop of blood. No longer was testing slow and cumbersome with big machines. It was the iPhone of the medical field. Despite having no medical degree and dropping out of university, Elizabeth was featured on the cover of Forbes and Fortune magazine. Everyone from the Walton family to Rupert Murdoch was jumping on board to invest. Her company, Theranos, was going to revolutionize medicine. The Theranos board included the former CEO of Wells Fargo and the former US Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger. At its peak, Theranos managed to muster a company valuation of $10 billion, but it wasn't to last. In 2015, the Wall Street Journal published a series of articles that suggested that its devices were flawed and inaccurate, and from there, skepticism began to grow. The Theranos story was one of the biggest scandals of the 2010s, and it was one of the most viewed episodes on this channel. So if you need to brush up on the entire story, be sure to watch the original episode first. In 2018, Holmes was indicted by the Department of Justice. Federal prosecutors accused the 37-year-old of defrauding investors, doctors, and patients. Holmes pled not guilty to 9 wire fraud counts and 2 conspiracy counts. There's a possible prison sentence of up to 20 years for each conviction. She also faces a fine of $250,000 plus restitution for each count. Her trial started in August of 2021, and earlier in the week, she was found guilty on 4 counts. In this episode, we'll take a look at how it all went down.
You are watching ColdFusion TV.
After the 2018 indictment, Elizabeth Holmes mostly went under the radar, but in 2019, she was spotted in San Francisco with her new partner, luxury hotel heir Billy Evans.
Elizabeth Holmes might be facing up to 20 years in prison, but she sure looks happy prancing around San Francisco. That's the disgraced tycoon and her fiancé, Billy Evans. Holmes has been arrested and charged with massive fraud.
Elizabeth, a lot of young women looked up to you, especially in tech. What would you have to say to those young women?
She wouldn't be running free for long though. When the trial did begin in 2021, the main crux of the case was as follows. Did Elizabeth Holmes knowingly deceive? Or was she just a struggling entrepreneur desperately buying some time to fix a product in good faith? The question here was intent. As James Melendres, a former federal prosecutor, told Wired magazine, quote, "The battleground is Holmes's mental state, whether or not she had the intent to commit fraud. You have 12 jurors, 12 people off the street, who sit in a room and decide what was in Holmes's mind." Witnesses included former employees who had stated that Holmes knowingly covered up the fact that the machines that she was touting didn't work. The courts found that Holmes convinced investors to pile in money by faking demos, exaggerating claims, and printing pharmaceutical company logos on Theranos reports to make them appear legitimate. She even made a claim of having a contract with the US military to boost the company's image. During the proceedings, all was laid bare. Emails, text messages, internal documents, you name it. It all pointed to what we suspected. Theranos was an absolute catastrophe. The government's first witness at the Holmes fraud trial was Theranos financial controller, Denise Yam. When Yam testified against Theranos, it painted a bleak picture. The company had net losses of $16.2 million in 2010, $27.2 million in 2011, $57 million in 2012, and $92 million in 2013. The company made no revenue in 2012 and 2013 and burned through $2 million per week in 2013. Yam testified that Theranos went for years without having its financial statements audited. By 2015, Theranos had accumulated losses of $585 million, but a document was given to investors that forecasted a revenue for 2014 of $140 million and a revenue for 2015 of $990 million. Former Pfizer scientist Shane Weber took the stand. He testified that Elizabeth Holmes used the Pfizer logo in investor materials without the company's permission. The purpose was to make Theranos appear more credible, particularly in a study aimed at validating their blood testing device. Prosecutors stated that it was part of a sham to convince Walgreens to invest. And it worked. Walgreens invested $140 million in the blood testing company. Holmes had placed the Pfizer logo at the top of each page of a cancer study report before sending it to Walgreens executives. The court was also shown an investor booklet. One page said, quote, "Theranos has been comprehensively validated over the course of the last 7 years by 10 of the 15 largest pharmaceutical companies, with hundreds of thousands of tests processed." Another witness, former Theranos employee Erica Chuang, took the stand. Elizabeth claimed that the Theranos devices could do over 1,000 tests, but according to Erica, in reality, they could do just 12, and not very well. She spoke about the large rate of inaccuracies in Theranos devices, saying that they regularly failed quality control analysis. Executives would then encourage scientists to cherry-pick and manipulate data to make the results seem more accurate than they were. Because the Theranos machines worked so poorly, most of the tests were done on third-party machines. A nurse practitioner from Arizona testified that Theranos machines were giving wildly inconsistent blood results. There was one case where she had a pregnant patient in her practice. The Theranos machines gave mystifying results, which indicated that the patient's pregnancy was going to fail. The patient, who also testified, eventually successfully delivered a baby. The experience left Nurse Zackerman, quote, "very uncertain as to the validity of the results." She also stated that she felt very uncomfortable continuing to use the services. It's important to note that medical decisions can be based off the results of blood tests, so it's not a stretch to say that Holmes was potentially endangering patients' lives with her faulty Theranos devices. Elizabeth Holmes took the stand for 7 days. Over this period, she deflected blame repeatedly. She blamed her ex-boyfriend and former business partner, Sunny Balwani, for falsifying financial reports. She went on to say that he abused her, causing her mental anguish affecting her performance and judgment at the company. Elizabeth also blamed Theranos' scientific advisors and Theranos' board for the company's failings. Prosecutors also focused on Sunny and Elizabeth's luxurious lifestyle. They went on to describe how Elizabeth Holmes travelled on private jets, stayed in luxury hotels, and also of her reliance on multiple assistants who took care of home decorating, clothes, shopping, and jewellery.
Elizabeth Holmes, once celebrated as the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world, left court a convicted felon, clutching the hands of her parents and husband. Late Monday, a jury found her guilty of 4 fraud-related counts.
After 7 days of deliberations, a jury in San Jose, California, found Elizabeth Holmes guilty on 4 counts of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Wire fraud in this case just means fraud, where the method of money transfer from investors to Theranos was a wire transfer. The jury returned a verdict of not guilty on another 4 counts, and they couldn't reach a unanimous verdict on 3. As mentioned, Holmes could be facing up to 20 years for each conviction and a combined $1 million fine for the 4 counts. So these charges mostly relate to the investors, and many say that it doesn't account for the wrongdoing against patients who received bogus blood results, or other partners such as Walgreens, who took faulty Theranos machines into their stores. But the thing that many people wonder is, how could she have gotten away with this for so long in the first place? Many further questions need to be asked. Theranos was a classic story of hype over substance. The reckless behaviour of Sunny and Elizabeth Holmes destroyed many opportunities for legitimate research in the field of multi-test blood work. Now other companies working on this problem will forever be looked at with skepticism. Speaking of which, what were the issues with the Theranos multi-test medical technology? Well, there are 3 main ones. Number 1, getting reliable results from a single drop of blood. Number 2, performing multiple tests with a single drop of blood. And number 3, shrinking the machine down to a desktop size. So for the first one, the idea of performing a battery of tests from a single drop of blood isn't new, though there are multiple medical studies that state that the results of a single drop of blood is intrinsically inconsistent. For example, concentrations of things such as white blood cell count and hemoglobin can vary from drop to drop when obtained from a finger. For the second issue, running multiple tests from a single drop of blood appears to be impossible with current technology. Right now, to receive results, either compounds have to be added to the blood or they have to be spun in a centrifuge, and sometimes other invasive methods are used. So once these things are done, it destroys the ability for repeat testing. Lastly, shrinking the machine down to a desktop size may have been possible, but only for a few select tests, not the thousands of tests that were claimed. And this is what most companies that dare to remain in the field are working on today. And with that, that's just about where the Theranos story ends. Sunny Balwani's trial will be in the future, but for now, the courts have decided that Elizabeth Holmes was indeed trying to scam investors out of billions, and now she could be facing decades in jail. So what do you guys think about the verdict? Do you think she deserved more? Or do you think justice was served? Feel free to discuss in the comment section below, or in the ColdFusion Discord. Anyway, that's about it from me. Hope you all had a great Christmas and New Year's, and I do hope to bring a lot of good stuff this year on this channel. This has been Dagogo, and you've been watching ColdFusion. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon for the next episode. Cheers guys, have a good one.
ColdFusion. It's new thinking.